handle?
No, it's just I have my.
We are live. We are live. Welcome, everyone. Happy Sunday. It is October 22nd, 2023. Thank you, Arya, for starting the feed. I appreciate it. Filling in for Jeremiah today. We welcome all of you. Thank you so much for joining us for this session with Dr. Nejati Al-Khan. We are currently in the process of going through a lot of historical records. Dr. Al-Khan is going through a lot of historical records. And this topic today is one of the, the session today is one of the most important subjects for people who want a conclusion to one of the earliest stories in the origins of the Baha'i faith. And that is the story of the second letter of the living, the second believer in the Bab, and his name was Mulla Ali Bastami. He is the second person to believe in the Bab, the herald of the Baha'i faith, of the faith of Bahá'u'lláh. The Bab in 1844 declared to Mulla Hussein, and after that declaration, they had to have some other believers of their own accord, of their own will, of their own choosing, come to and believe in the message of the Bab, the gate to this new age. This week's topic is the life and fate of Mulla Ali Bastami, letter of the living, the second believer in God, and the first to suffer for his sake. We will follow the life of Mulla Ali Bastami, a disciple of the Bab, a letter of the living, who was sent as his emissary to Iraq to propagate his cause. Bastami, who was the first to leave the house of God in Shiraz and the first to suffer for his sake, was imprisoned in Baghdad by the Ottomans, put on trial, exiled to Istanbul, which was then Constantinople, and punished with hard labor at the dockyard. Finally, as a consequence of the hardships he faced, Bastami most probably died in Istanbul. Baha'i sources and Ottoman archival documents will be used in this talk to illustrate this exceptional disciple of the Bab. And, well, researching these archives, Dr. Nejati Al-Khan, he has gone through various records, and that's why we're here today, to discuss some of these discoveries. Dr. Al-Khan has been fascinated with Baha'i studies, especially history, since his youth, studying Islamic studies and history then at the university, opening new vistas. It opened new vistas then, and it continues to now. By learning Arabic, Persian, and in particular, Uthman Turkish, besides his native Turkish and almost native education in German and English languages, Dr. Al-Khan felt equipped to delve into Baha'i studies. He has been publishing since 2001 on various subjects. And actually, as a matter of this introduction, we invite you to see some of the subjects he's presented on here with Clearwater Baha'is. If you please take a pen and paper and write this down, www.clearwaterbaha'is.org, and you look for the videos with Dr. Al-Khan. He has actually shown quite a few amazing resources where he's been able to show this exile of Bahá'u'lláh through the Ottoman records, pulling these Ottoman records of the exile, the banishment, and the provisions that were provided, and all these different things that on paper was recorded by the Ottoman authorities. With that being said, we welcome you all to just take a step back in time with us to the very beginning of this faith as we walk back again forward in time and view these amazing documents which Dr. Al-Khan has been able to research and pull from for this presentation today. Dr. Al-Khan, with that little rocky start right in the beginning, we appreciate that you're here with us, and we look forward to this discussion. So at your leisure, if you want to share screen or what have you, we are ready.
Sure. Thank you very much, John. It's very kind of you, very kind of you to host me again. So I think you're seeing my screen, right?
Yes, and actually, if you go into the view mode for the presentation, we're plugged in and ready to go.
Wait. Yes, now you have it, right?
Yes, we see it. The title, The
Okay.
Life and Fate of Mulla Ali
Okay.
Bastami.
Yes. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm very thrilled to present this topic to you, which is at the heart of the Babi faith, in fact. And I cannot express my feelings about this man, about Mulla Ali Bastami, who was really an exceptional disciple of the Bab. Before I start talking about him, I would like to briefly talk about the importance of the letters of the living.
Really quick, before we do that, what was those two titles that we just read in quotes? What were those? Like, people are wondering why those two quoted titles.
These ones, yes, I will come to that, but I can tell it. I can also tell it now.
Oh no, it's fine then. So we're gonna get there.
Yes,
there.
we're gonna get
everyone
there. Yes,
hold on. We're gonna get there.
Okay, thanks. I will mention it again. So, as you know, the first 18 disciples or followers or believers in the Bab were named by him the letters of the living. And the letters of the living, this phrase is an Arabic Persian construct meaning huruf hay. So huruf is letters and hay is the living, which is a title or attribute of God. And huruf hay means letters of the living. So why did the Bab choose this? I will briefly mention this. So the living, the word hay in Arabic consists of two letters and has the numerical value of 18. So in this respect, it's just logical that the Bab chose this title, which and applied it for his first 18 disciples. So it's symbolic for the first 18 disciples, and then plus the Bab, they are 19 persons. And as you know, 19 is a holy number in the Baha'i faith, and it's the numerical value of the word wahid in Arabic, which means one simply, or it can mean unit or unity. And so the letters are actually manifestations of the one, if you will. And the Bab links the 18 letters of the living with the concept of return also in his writings, especially in the Persian Bayan. He says that all the sacred figures of the Islamic dispensation have returned to the world through the sacred figures of his own religion. Meaning that the letters of the living were spiritually the returns of, say, Prophet Muhammad and the 12 Imams and so on. And so the first of the sacred figures is, of course, the Bab. He was the point. That was the title of the Bab, as you know, the primal point. And he is the source of all the others and everything, in fact. I will also elaborate on this later. And so the other sacred figures of Islam are called the letters of the living, because letters are the immediate manifestations of the point. And if you have a pen or a pencil and you put it on a paper, the first thing you have is the point, is one point. And the Bab says that from this point, everything other, all the letters and everything comes to manifest itself. And so they are the letters of the living. The living, as I said, is an attribute of God because they, according to the Bab, the letters of the living, they were the first to attain life in the new dispensation. And as I already mentioned, the word living in Arabic is numerically equal to 18. And these souls together, again, to repeat, comprise 19 sacred figures with the Bab. And the number 19 is symbolic of creation, as the Bab also elaborates in his writings. And one of the names is the primal point, indicating that everything first the letters of the living, and then all other parts of all things. Again, this all things in Arabic, kul shay, has the numerical value of 361, so 19 multiplied with 19. And as you know, it's also in the Baha'i calendar, this symbolism. So the Bab says everything, all of creation originates from him. And in line with the symbolism of the sacred script, also in Islam, including letters and points, the point under the Arabic letter B or Ba, in the first letter of this Islamic phrase, Bismillah, relates to the famous tradition attributed to Ali, Imam Ali, the cousin and son-in-law of Muhammad and the first Imam of the Shia. And so, as you probably all heard, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is at the beginning of almost every surah of every chapter in the Quran, and it has 19 letters when you write it in Arabic. And the meaning is in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. So coming to this tradition, which is attributed to Imam Ali, he says, all of the knowledge of all the holy books is in the Quran. And all of the knowledge of the Quran is in the Fatiha, which is the first opening surah. And all of the knowledge of the Fatiha is in the Basmala. This is the invocation. And all of the knowledge of the Basmala is in the letter Ba, letter B. And all of the knowledge in the B is in the point under the B. And I am that point. And the Bab refers to this and says, he is that point under the B, under the Arabic B, which is the source of all creation. And all knowledge is in the 19 letters of this invocation, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and derives from the Bab as a manifestation of God in the station of the primal point. Now we have a tablet by Abdul Baha referring to the importance of the letters of the living, where he says, the greatness and glory of most of these letters of the living resides solely in the fact that they professed their faith at the very beginning. Among them, and in terms of importance, a few souls occupy a primary position, Mulla Hussein, Quddus, and Tahiri. And few other blessed souls occupy a secondary position, and the rest are honored solely for having believed in the very beginning. Two of them, even, like Judas Iscariot, recanted their faith later. After the blessed person of the Bab came to light and his fame spread, Mullah Hussein unloosed his tongue and openly taught the faith, and was charged to go to other provinces and teach. These, in short, are the events surrounding the declaration of allegiance of Mullah Hussein and the other letters of the living. This is a short statement by Abdul Baha about the importance of the letters of the living. And so coming to Mulla Ali Bastami, we have a short description by Shoghi Effendi in God Passes By, which sums really neatly up his life. So Shoghi Effendi says, with the Bab's return to Shiraz, the initial collision of irreconcilable forces may be said to have commenced. Already the energetic and audacious Mulla Ali Bastami, one of the letters of the living, the first to leave the house of God, which is Shiraz, and the first to suffer for his sake. This is a quote, actually, which is from the Dawnbreakers, Nabil's narrative, and where the Bab is quoted, actually, the first to leave the house of God and the first to suffer for his sake, who in the presence of one of the leading exponents of Shia Islam, the far-famed Sheikh Muhammad Hassan, I will come to him later, had audaciously asserted that from the pen of his newfound master, within the space of 48 hours, verses had streamed that equaled in number those of the Quran, which it took its author 23 years to reveal, had been excommunicated, chained, disgraced, imprisoned, and in all probability done to death. So this is Shoghi Effendi about the life of Mullah al-Bastami. And to the phrase, the second believer in God, is actually by the Bab himself. In the Persian Bayan, the Bab says that Mullah al-Bastami is the second who believed in the point, which in the Bab. And the Bab also says that Bastami is the return of Imam Ali, and his followers were resurrected with him. And it's below you see the translation by E.G. Brown, where the Bab says Ali, the first Imam, had returned to life of the world with those who believed in him and his subordinates. And he is the second of those who believed in the point after the Sin, which is the letter S and which is in the name of Mulla Hussein. So Mulla Ali Bastami is the second who believed in the Bab after Mulla Hussein. As I mentioned, the Bab says that all the sacred figures of the Islamic dispensation have returned to the world through the sacred figures of his own religion. And the 18 letters of the living, the Bab says, manifested themselves in the last, meaning the Muhammadan manifestation or the Islamic manifestation in the persons of the 14 holy souls, which is the Prophet himself, his daughter Fatima, and the 12 Imams, of whom the first Ali was her husband. So the Bab basically says the letters of the living and he himself are the returns of these 14 holy souls in Islam. In another tablet, the Bab says that Mulla Ali Bastami believed after hearing only one verse. I quote, "There are among the servants of God those who believe after hearing one verse, just as Ali al-Bastami heard just one verse and did not ask for another proof." So this shows that, he didn't hesitate. I mean, we know that Mullah Hussein, for example, needed some explanations, some proofs by the Bab during that night on 22nd of May, 1844. But he says that Mullah Ali Bastami just heard one verse and declared his belief. So Mulla Ali Bastami, he was born in a village near the city of Bastam in the Khorasan province in Iran. We don't know when he was born, but we know that he had his primary education in Bastam. He married there and had children. And in Mashhad, which is one of the important holy cities of Shia Islam, he completed his education and became known actually for his sincerity and his zeal in investigating religious matters. And in the course of his studies, Mullah Ali learned about the Shaykhi movement of Sheikh Ahmad al-Ahsa'i, who, as you know, was one of the forerunners of the Bab with Sayyid Kazim Rashdi. So Mullah Ali was immediately attracted to the Shaykhi movement and soon entered into communication with its leader, then Sayyid Kazim Rashdi. After that, Mullah Ali left his home and his family to study under Sayyid Kazim in Karbala in Ottoman Iraq, an important center of Shia scholarship still to this day, and the seat of the Shaykhi movement then. So Bastami stays 7 years with Kazim Rashdi in Karbala and becomes one of his foremost disciples. He returns after his family entreats him. He returns after 7 years to Bastam, but 2 years later he returns to Karbala to Sayyid Kazim Rashdi. As you also probably know, most of the letters of the living spent 40 days in seclusion and fasting in the city of Kufa, also in Ottoman Iraq, during their search for the promised one after the death of Sayyid Kazim, and then they set out to seek the promised one. And Mullah Ali Bastami, together with 12 other companions, arrives at the great mosque in Kufa in Iraq, and he finds his fellow disciple Mullah Hussein Bushrui immersed in contemplation and prayer. And we have records about Mullah Ali Bastami saying that he was endowed with such vast learning and was so deeply conversant with the teachings of Sheikh Ahmad that many regarded him even superior to Mullah Hussein. And we have also an interesting Shia tradition, a hadith, that the companions of the Qa'im or the Mahdi will pitch their tents in the mosque of Kufa, and that the promised one will come with a new cause. And according to Baha'i prophecy, this was fulfilled by Mulla Bastami and the other disciples. So Mulla Bastami and his companions, after 40 days of seclusion in the mosque of Kufa, they arrive in Shiraz. And after Mullah Hussein prepares them in their search for the promised one, most of the letters of the living stay at the mosque of El-Khani in Shiraz. And again, 40 days after Mullah Hussein believed in the Bab, the other letters of the living also recognized and believed in the Bab. And so from Nabil in the Dawnbreakers, we have this, he describes how Mullah Ali Bastami finds that the Bab is the promised one. So Nabil says, on the third night of the retirement, whilst wrapped in prayer, Mullah Ali Bastami had a vision. There appeared before his eyes a light, and lo, that light moved off before him. Allured by its splendor, he followed it, till at last it led him to his promised beloved. At that very hour, in the mid-watches of the night, he arose and exultant with joy and radiant with gladness, opened the door of his chamber and hastened to Mullah Hussein. He threw himself into the arms of the revered companion. Mullah Hussein most lovingly embraced him and said, "Praise be to God who hath guided us hither. We had not been guided had not God guided us." The first meeting of Mullah Ali with the Bab, which was analogous to the meeting with Mullah Hussein, differed only in this respect, that whereas at the previous meeting, the proofs and testimonies of the Bab's mission had been critically scrutinized and expounded, at this one, all argument had been set aside, and nothing but the spirit of intense adoration and of close and ardent fellowship prevailed. The entire chamber seemed to have been vitalized by the celestial potency which emanated from the Bab's inspired utterance. Everything in that room seemed to be vibrating with his testimony. Verily, verily, the dawn of a new day has broken. The promised one is enthroned in the hearts of men. In his hand he holds the mystic cup, the chalice of immortality. Blessed are they who drink therefrom. And Nabil continues, each of the 12 companions of Mullah Ali in his turn and by his own unaided efforts sought and found his beloved. Some in sleep, others in waking, and a few whilst in prayer, and still others in their moments of contemplation, experienced the light of this divine revelation and were led to recognize the power of its glory. After the manner of Mullah Ali, these and a few others, accompanied by Mullah Hussein, attained the presence of the Bab and were declared letters of the living. 17 letters were gradually enrolled in the preserved tablet of God and were appointed as the chosen apostles of the Bab, the ministers of his faith and the diffusers of his light. Here stops Nabil's narrative, and then we learn that the last letter of the living was Quddus, the last one to arrive and to recognize the Bab. And the Bab said in that respect, 17 letters have thus far enlisted under the standard of the faith of God. There remains one more to complete the number. These letters of the living shall arise to proclaim my cause and to establish my faith. Tomorrow night, the remaining letter will arrive and will complete the number of my chosen disciples. The Bab, again in the Persian Bayan, says, "Behold the beginning of the revelation of the Bayan. For 40 days, no one believed in the B, meaning the Bab, except for the letter of S, Mullah Hussein. And then the temples or bodies of the letters of Bismillah attained the garments of faith one by one, until the first Wahid or unity was completed." So the Bab basically says that as soon as the 18 letters of living were gathered, they attained the garments of faith one by one, and he as the 19th person, they fulfilled this First, unity, which is equal to this Islamic invocation, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which has 19 letters in Arabic, as I said, and 19 again is the numerical value of wahid, one, or unity in Arabic. And so everything the Bab actually writes in the Persian bayan, also in the Arabic bayan, is based on unities, on wahids. So let's say one unity begins, and then there are different gates, actually different chapters, babs. And so this is just the kind of a playful thing which the Bab has in most of his writings with the number 19. Now, we have a list of the letters of the living in Nabil's narrative in the Dawnbreakers, and there the fourth of the letter of the living is Mulla Ali Bastami. So Mulla Ali Bastami is listed at the fourth letter of the living, and there seems to be a discrepancy with the statements of the Bab himself. So the question is, the Bab says that Bastami is the second believer, but was he the fourth letter or the second letter? Actually, when you have the Dawnbreakers, when you open it, you will see the facsimiles of several tablets of the Bab. And this one you see here is the facsimile of the Bab's tablet to the second letter of the living. And so I was wondering whether this was written to Mulla Ali Bastami or the second letter of the living, the brother of Mullah Hussein, which you see on the top, Muhammad Hassan. So if the second letter of the living was Muhammad Hassan, then according to Nabil, Mulla Ali Bastami was the fourth letter of the living. And here in the facsimile of this tablet, we see the tablet of the Bab to the second letter of the living. So I asked the Baha'i World Center, and they send me a typed copy. And in fact, here the Bab addresses the second who believed in me. So it seems that it's also addressed to Mulla Ali Bastami, and he is the second letter of the living and not the fourth. And I have parts of it provisionally translated, and there the Bab addresses him in these words. He says, "And when thou hast believed in God, thy Lord, when he manifested himself, he made thee the second believer in himself, as a token of his grace. Verily, he is the protector of those who fear God. Thou shouldst command the people unto that which God hath revealed. Then let not the wails of the people grieve thee, for we are verily the cheerful. Grieve thou not over the deeds of the people, and be not of the silent. We verily made thee victorious in the past, as Imam Ali, probably meaning that, and shall make thee victorious in the future as a promise from our part. We verily are the truthful. It behoveth thee to proclaim the cause of God unto all according to the book, as ordained by him. He verily is the best of witnesses. And speak of the cause of God during the daytime and the night season, and be not of them that tarry. God shall prove with his cause whatever he willeth, and ordaineth as he pleaseth." So this is what the Bab actually in this tablet, which is addressed to the second letter of the living, says it is for the second believer in himself. It should be Mulla Ali Bastami. Then to continue with the life of Mulla Ali Bastami, we also learn from the Dawnbreakers that the Bab summoned to his presence Mulla Ali Bastami and addressed him words of cheer and loving kindness. He instructed him to proceed directly to Najaf and Karbala, the two holy cities in Iraq, alluded to the severe trials and afflictions that would befall him, and enjoined him to be steadfast till the end. Your faith, the Bab told him, must be immovable as the rock, must weather every storm and survive every calamity. Suffer not the denunciations of the foolish and the calumnies of the clergy to afflict you or to turn you from your purpose. For you are called to partake of the celestial banquet prepared for you in the immortal realm. You are the first to leave the house of God and to suffer for his sake. If you be slain in his path, remember that great will be your reward, and goodly the gift which will be bestowed upon you. So Mulla Ali Bastami goes actually first to the port city of Bushehr in southern Iran and meets the uncle of the Bab, who later declares his faith in the Bab. And after that, Mulla Ali Bastami sets out to Najaf in Ottoman Iraq, as I said, and tells the Shi'i and Shaykhi scholars that the promised one has appeared. There, the greatest scholar, which is called Mujtahid, Sheikh Muhammad Hassan, rejects Bastami's message and expels him from the city. This gentleman you see on the right, and Bahá'u'lláh says about him in the Kitab-i Aqdas, call ye to mind the Sheikh whose name was Muhammad Hassan, who ranked among the most learned divines of his day. When the true one was made manifest, this Sheikh, along with others of his calling, rejected him, the Bab, while a sifter of wheat and barley accepted him and turned unto the Lord. Though he was occupied both night and day in setting down what he conceived to be the laws and ordinances of God, yet when he who is the unconstrained appeared, not one letter thereof availed him, nor he would not have turned away from a countenance that hath illumined the faces of the well-favored of the Lord. And Bahá'u'lláh later in his Lawh-i-Nasir quotes the Bab addressing Sheikh Muhammad Hassan regarding Mulla Ali Bastami, saying, we have resurrected Ali, Imam Ali, from his grave and sent him to you with clear tablets. Hadst thou recognized him and prostrated yourself before him, this would have been indeed better than 70 years of worship. Yet thou hast veiled yourself from this matter. When Mulla Ali Bastami was in Karbala, later, as I said, he was expelled from Najaf, and then he went to Karbala and shared some writings of the Bab with the Shaykhis there, and many accepted the message. Among them was Tahireh, as we know, the only female letter of the living who never met the Bab. So she learned about the Bab from Mulla Ali Bastami in Karbala. And then coming to the Ottoman version of the Bastami affair, based on Ottoman documents, the conflict created by Mulla Ali Bastami in Karbala disturbed the public. The issue is also mentioned in the correspondence of the British consul in Baghdad, who also wrote a letter to Constantinople at that time. And the Shia ulama, the clerics in Karbala, arrested Ali Bastami and sent him to Baghdad, the center of the province where he was imprisoned. The Ottoman governor of Baghdad, Najib Pasha, actually this is the Najib Pasha who had owned the Rezwan garden in Baghdad. That's why it's called Najibiya garden. So this Najib Pasha dealt with the issue of the Mahdi's messengers, as he says, and correspondence with Istanbul, with the Sultan, began after that. What Najib Pasha did was he established a court to trial Mulla Ali on January 13th, 1845. And the peculiarity of this court was that it was perhaps the first time that Sunni and Shia scholars agreed on an issue about a common enemy. And the Mufti, the highest cleric of Baghdad at that time, Sheikh Mahmud al-Alusi, he presided over the court. And a total of 20 Sunni and 8 Shia clerics gathered, and they issued a fatwa, a religious decree about the Bab and Bastami. Of course, the name of the Bab wasn't known at that time because Bastami didn't disclose it. What basically happened as the outcome of this trial was that the Sunnis, the Sunni clerics, demanded the death of the Bab and Bastami. The Shia clerics opposed it and demanded that Bastami sent back to Iran. And this is the religious decree, the fatwa in the Ottoman archives, actually, which was studied many, many years ago by our scholar Mujan Momen in one of his articles, basically saying that what you see on the left is actually portions from the Bab's first writing, Qayyum al-Asma, which he began revealing in that night with Mulla Hussein, and which the clerics then at the trial called the perverted copy of the Quran. And so this religious decree is basically saying that the one claiming to be the promised one, the Mahdi, is an unbeliever. And on the right you see this the seals and the verdicts of the Sunni and Shi'i clerics, basically condemning the Bab and Bastami of heresy. Now, there are reports of Necip Pasha to Istanbul, where he notes that although Bastami is detained in prison in Baghdad following the verdict passed on him, it was proposed that it is more appropriate to send Bastami to Istanbul in order to prevent mischief because of the manifest blasphemies in the writings he was carrying. Apart from that, Necip Pasha says that it was anticipated that if he is set free, his presence in Baghdad will cause rumor among the people and the clerics who are disturbed by his grievous and infamous crime. And then in a longer report by Necip Pasha, it is said that Mulla Ali, who was a disciple of Kazim Rashti, who, quoting Necip Pasha, who pretends to be a Sayyid and one of the leaders of the superstitious Shi'i sect, came to Najaf, showed people a false Quran and led them astray, and hundreds of people followed him. This should be prevented because this great mischief will lead different peoples and tribes from the right path and become a threat to the Ottoman Empire. And during the interrogation, as Necip Pasha quotes him in this report, Bastami is reported to have said, "When I was about to return from my native land, to hear a man, meaning the Bab from among the Sayyids, ordered me and entrusted me with this message. You are going to Baghdad. Take this book and give it to the Mujtahids in Najaf and Karbala." So the Bab also instructs him to go to these two cities. "Tell them that I'm the deputy of the Mahdi." So the Bab here in the beginning says that he's not the promised one, but the deputy of the promised one. And then he says, "I will go to pilgrimage to Mecca this year, and from the pilgrimage I will go to Karbala. The Mahdi will manifest himself in the month of Muharram in Karbala." I directly went to Najaf. All the clerics were assembled in one place. I took the book and gave it to them and conveyed what the Sayyid had said. They opened the book, each of them read one or two sheets of it, and then threw it away. They did not treat me with courtesy. 2 days later, I came to Karbala. The aforesaid book that was circulated among many people was sent to Karbala. The sheets were brought together there, and the local governor arrested me and transferred me to you. So this is, according to Necip Pasha, the governor of Baghdad, the words of Mulla Ali Bastami. And upon asking Bastami who sent this book and what his name was, and if he had the whole book with him, he responded, "The book I took with me should consist of approximately 16, 17 portions. But I don't know the Sayyid's name or the content of the book." Necip Pasha says that this was a manifest lie, and every time Bastami was tried, he gave contradictory answers. But we know that as told by the Bab, none of the letters of the living should disclose the Bab's name during the interrogation. So this is what Bastami also did. And then there is a letter of the Ottoman Prime Minister at that time regarding the Bastami affair to Sultan Abdul Majid. There, the Prime Minister states that it was understood in a recent consultation that if the messenger of the Mahdi, of the promised one, remains imprisoned in Baghdad, this will cause a dispute and provoke remarkable annoyance. He therefore should be sent to Mosul and afterwards be dealt with accordingly. However, because the situation in Mosul was not much different from Baghdad, and the Muslim clerics' rebellion there had manifested itself in another instance, it was more appropriate that he be sent to the town of Bolu, and from there he may be sent further to one of the islands, where he can be further dealt with. It appears that Bastami was detained in Baghdad for at least 10 months, according to the dates of the reports, as another report also is from September 1845, is extant. Now, in the letter of which I just paraphrased, the Prime Minister suggests that Mulla Bastami should be sent to Bolu, so most probably he was sent to this town, which you see on the red on the map, which is near Istanbul. So Bastami was apparently stayed in Bolu for a while and then was exiled to Istanbul and not sent to one of the islands, because he could have done harm with his ideas there without any control. This is what the Prime Minister also adds to his report later. At the end, Bastami was condemned by Sultan Abdul-Mejid to hard labor at the dockyard in Istanbul, and most probably he died in Istanbul. We have a Persian letter of the Iranian consul at that time in Istanbul, with dating from 3rd of December 1846, where the Iranian consul says, Mulla Ali, who was exiled by the governor of Baghdad last year, which is 1845, after questioning in a court meeting, stayed for a while in Bolu, and while he was on his way to Istanbul. He was sentenced to hard labor in Istanbul based on the judgments of the clerics in Baghdad. Since Mulla Ali was Iranian, the Iranian state took up the matter and told the Ottoman authorities to return him, since it was Iran's right to punish him. The Ottomans delayed the matter and did not deliver Bastami, but then after pressure was applied, the Ottomans wanted to send Bastami back. However, a few days ago, the news of Mulla Ali's death was received, says the Iranian consul. So we don't really for sure know how he died and where his grave is, but most probably, according to this report, it was in Istanbul. We have also at least 2 newspaper reports about the Bastami affair. One news from Constantinople, published in Bombay Times on April 12, 1845, which also sums up the trial, the court trial of Nejid Pasha about Bastami, saying that it was confusing each side, the Iranians and the Ottomans. And then we have also from the London Illustrated News from April 19th of 1845, also saying that there was a dispute between Turkey and Persia in consequence of the Pasha of Baghdad having condemned to death a Persian dervish for sacrilege, for forming a new sect by preaching for an apocryphal Quran. This is how the whole affair was deemed also in the West. To continue the story, while the Bab was on pilgrimage in Mecca and Medina, in 1845, he received the news of the arrest of Mulla Ali Bastami, and on his return from the pilgrimage in April 1845, the Bab sent tablets to the Iranian ruler Muhammad Shah and his Grand Vizier Mirza Aghasi from Muscat in Oman. And in addition, a tablet was revealed to the Ottoman Sultan Abdul-Mejid, and the Bab speaks of Bastami there in this tablet to the Ottoman Sultan Abdul-Mejid, where he says, it's also a provisional translation, read the book of thy Lord, O Majid, through the command of thy Lord in the preserved book. Know thou that God hath knowledge of all things in the heavens and on earth, and that thou art concerning the verdict passed on the messenger, the Lord of great oppression. Fear God, O thou man, for today there is no escape for anyone except he believeth in the signs of thy Lord, and is accounted among those who prostrate before him. Likewise, the book was sent down for the kings, that they might learn of the command of a new creation. O thou man, this is how the Bab addresses the Sultan. O thou man, thou hast followed Satan regarding the verdict to imprison the messenger of the remembrance, meaning the messenger of the Bab. Fear God after thou hast read a single wondrous letter from our book. Do not repudiate the command of God and send the messenger back in accordance with the command we have sent down in the book addressed to thee, according to a mighty and wondrous command. Thou art not aware of the matter of the caliphate. The messenger is a weak servant in those lands. Yet know thou full well that it is we that sent him. We verily are potent over all things. We verily bear witness unto everything. Know thou God's decree and send him after thou hast read this letter. Verily do we write the decree of thy death at thine own hands, and we are aware of what we accomplish. Follow God's command, O Majid, and not thine idle imaginings that mislead thee from the path of God. God's decree is not but a manifest announcement. This is from the tablet of the Bab to Sultan Abdul Majid. We don't know whether Sultan Abdul Majid actually received that tablet. There is a copy of the tablet at the Baha'i World Center, and also partially published in one or two Baha'i publications. And we also learned that the Bab also sent a tablet to Najib Pasha, the governor of Baghdad, but we also don't know about the whereabouts of this tablet. Shogh Effendi mentions in God Passes By the revelation of the Bab's first tablet to Muhammad Shah, of his tablets to Sultan Abdul Majid and to Najib Pasha, the Wali of Baghdad. After the Bastami affair, we know that Tahireh spread the Bab's cause, and many people accepted the cause in Najaf and Karbala in Iraq, where she was at that time. She was very active and was attracting many people to the cause of the Bab. And this, of course, again drew the attention of the Shia clerics and created hostility in these two cities, and they forced Tahireh to be under house arrest. As with Mulla Ali Bastami, they complained about Tahireh to Najib Pasha because she continued Bastami's activities. And we have a report of Najib Pasha writing about Tahireh from 19th of February, 1847. There Najib Pasha says, I will quote, as your excellency, so this is a letter of Najib Pasha to the Ottoman prime minister. As your excellency knows, previously a certain Mulla Ali from Bastam was sent to Bolu by imperial decree because he had come to Karbala with a false claim of being the deputy of the Mahdi, distributed some sheets, the reading of which was unlawful, and said, this is the real Quran, thus inciting mischief in the region of Karbala. In the same vein, this time a woman named Qurratul Ain appeared and is exerting efforts in distributing mischief in the same region and attracting and inviting ignorant people to be her followers. In order to prevent the mischief, the said woman was arrested and is kept at the mansion of Al-Hajj Mahdi, who is of her own kind, probably meaning also a Shi'i, and the custodian of the holy shrine of Imam Hussein in Karbala. In order to face the situation, a petition in Arabic was written and presented by the clerics of Karbala and sent together with this Turkish translation to Your Excellency for a detailed investigation. Yet even if the issues should not be repeated, the things that the woman attempted are harmful to religion and doctrine. Although the actual mischief was prevented and she was expelled, a group of innovators was given a chance to appear, and the said woman was able to propagate and carry out her mischievous intention. based on the fact that they will undoubtedly mislead the people of the region of Iraq from the right path to the blind alley of corruption and discord. It was communicated to the district governor of Karbala to instantly act upon and arrest that woman at her location for the sole purpose of avoiding her mingling with people and so preventing the mischief. Whatever is deemed as suitable in order to expel her, like Mulla Ali, so as to protect the populace from her mischief, I ask to command this lowly servant forthwith. So this report by Necip Pasha about Tahirih, and we know that Tahirih also spent some time in the house of the Mufti of Baghdad, as who I mentioned, Sheikh Mahmoud al-Alusi, and this Mufti of Baghdad was the main person who condemned in this religious decree, in this fatwa, the cause of the Bab and Bastami. And then we learn from other Baha'i sources that later on, when Tahirih was in house prison at his home, he actually changed his view about the Bab and was positive also towards Tahirih. In any case, we know that 3 months later, an order came from Sultan Abdul Majid to release Tahirih on the condition that she stop the Babi propaganda and leave the Ottoman Empire. We learned this from Baha'i sources, and afterwards, when we come to the time of Baha'u'lláh in Baghdad, when he was residing there or was in exile in Baghdad, we learned that positive reports were sent to Istanbul from different statesmen about the Babis, and that Sultan Abdul Majid's attitude also changed. And Shoghi Effendi says, so struck indeed had the Sultan Abdul Majid been by the favorable reports received about Baha'u'lláh from successive governors of Baghdad. This is the personal testimony given by the governor's deputy to Baha'u'lláh himself, that he consistently refused to countenance the requests of the Persian government, either to deliver him to their representative or to order his expulsion from Turkish territory. And we know that later, when Abdul Majid's brother Abdulaziz became Sultan, the Ottoman government's friendly attitude towards Baha'u'lláh changed to the worse because of his growing popularity among Ottoman officials and Iranian immigrants in Baghdad and in Iraq in general, frightened Iranian clerics and the Iranian consul general in Baghdad. And they sent alarming letters to Nasreddin Shah describing the respect of the people of Baghdad for Baha'u'lláh. And with this, I come back to my first talk, which I gave a few weeks ago. And this is where I stop. And I thank you for your attention. John?
Thank you so much, Dr. Al-Khan. Sorry.
Thank you.
I have a little friend here that wants to say hi to everybody. Her name is Alita.
Hi.
So with that being said, dear Mary, you've raised your hand. If you could please unmute yourself and ask your question. Thank you, Mary. I just sent a request to unmute.
So this is Mary Rose, and I have a couple of questions. One is, I think it was like the second or third slide. I mean, you were talking about the letters of the living, Dr. Al-Khan. There was like what looked like a drawing or a picture. What is the source of that? Is that just a stock picture, or are they supposed to be the letters of the living?
Oh, that one. Oh, the picture. It's actually from this movie about the Bab, The Gate.
Oh, it's on The Gate.
Yes,
Oh
yes.
my God. Oh, okay. Okay.
So it's not real.
Okay. I didn't think it was, but I was curious as to how it came about. And
it's from the movie.
The other question I have,
Please.
as I was hearing you, talk about Tahirih and all she did, I mean, women were not out in public places. So it wasn't like she was going to the mosque or going to, the outside where people gathered. So how was she doing this? Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I know that she would speak behind the veil. Correct me, anyone who knows better than me. I think that she most probably was behind the veil and was talking then to the people in some room, I would guess.
Okay. So basically, wherever she was staying, she would. Okay, yeah, because I have heard of that, but I just didn't put the two together. Thank you very much, Dr. Elton.
Thank you. I think there are a couple other questions. Carol?
Yes, I'm turning on my camera. It's good to see you live since
Thank you, Carol.
communicated with you years ago. I guess it was
Likewise.
Right. Anyway, my question is something I've kind of wondered about for a long time, and I think this is a good time to maybe ask it. And it's kind of related to the previous question. The fact that these men were basically free to leave their families and their wives. And I realize most of them probably lived in extended family circumstances, so other family members took care of the wives and children. But what was the feeling of the wives and the children, and possibly the men too, in terms of this aspect? Because, and I know it wasn't just the Babis or the Baha'is leaving their wives. I know this was part of the culture, I guess, that the men take off and do whatever they wanted to, and the women and children left behind. So I would just appreciate any comments or understanding on that aspect. Thank you.
Well, to be honest, I don't know anyone else can answer this. So, Anthony, maybe? Tony, would you like to comment?
Yes, if you can hear me.
Yes.
First,
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
okay, great. Yeah, first on the question of Tahirih and her teaching, she was living in the home of Sayyid Kazim, I believe, and had converted his wife to the Babi religion. And I believe she had a following of a number of women whom she was in touch with, and her teaching to the women was quite extensive. So clearly she wasn't behind a veil then, but the men would come to the home of Sayyid Kazim, which was a gathering place for sheikhs. And then she would preach from behind a curtain. It wasn't that she only had a following of men. As a matter of fact, her teachings were very decidedly feminine, and attracted a lot of women. As far as the wives of the Letters of the Living and other scholars, we don't have any direct information about this because nobody was writing about the wives or paying attention to them. But it was quite normal for Muslim men, and particularly learned men, to go on pilgrimages to Mecca or to Karbala or to Mashhad, and to leave their families for long periods of time. And of course, they would be, the wives and children would be in the care of an uncle or a father or, a cousin or some other member of the family. So this, it wasn't unusual. And of course, the men could always take a second wife or a temporary wife or something if they were going to be in one place for a long time.
Right. Thank you.
So I just want to say, Dr. Alkan, so Anthony Lee is one of our former speakers. He actually presented.
Yes.
He runs the Kalamat Press over in California.
I
Just
know
a
Tony.
shout out for everybody. The Kalamat Press, they publish books, a lot of cool Baha'i books.
Yes.
You're welcome to check them out.
Thank
Right.
you. I'm so honored to see our speaker for the first time and to hear him. And
Thank you, Tony.
wanted to see you for so many years, actually.
Thank you,
So
Tony.
this-
Likewise.
It's a great meeting today, huh?
Oh, this is great. I am
So
just-
we have
Thank
3
you.
questions coming up. I'd like to get first to Terry, then I'm sorry if it's out of order, but I see Stephen Collins and then George Mellinghoff,
Yes.
and then Mary Rose after George account.
Okay. Okay. My question is concerning Tahare and this other incident that you're mentioning. How is it, chronologically speaking, related to the meeting at Kajaf, where I guess Tahare was meeting, I guess Bahá'u'lláh might have been present there with Abdul Baha. I mean, how far apart were these meetings to what you were presenting?
Oh, I see. You mean when Abdul was sitting on her lap? Good question. I think, well, I mean, we know that after she was expelled from Ottoman Iraq, she went to Persia, and probably it was afterwards, but I'm not sure. I'm really not sure if it was.
Well,
like,
we can do the math. We can do the math based on when she was in the protection of Bahá'u'lláh. So Abdul Baha was born on May 23rd, 1844. His birthday is the same as the beginning of the Babi
Right.
revelation.
Right.
So if we just look at, if it was, for example, 1848, he would have been about 4 years old, depending on if it exceeded May 23rd. He would be 3 years old before May. He'd be 4
Right.
years old after May.
Yeah.
So presumably in this case, it would have been at least until 1852 when Baha'u'llah was, of course, put into the Siachal. But before that, Tahirih was martyred and murdered. Was it around 1850, 1851?
52, I think, no?
I think she survived the Bab's martyrdom of
Yes.
1850. So sometime between 1850 and 52, she was actually martyred.
Yes.
So that is an excellent question, Terry. Now we
Thank
have,
you.
I believe, second was Stephen Collins.
Yes.
Dr. Velkan, great talk. On your German background connection studies, and also you showed an English newspaper. It is my understanding that one of the versions of the English newspaper coverage actually says that it's from a German newspaper.
Oh, is it?
And
Okay.
and Dr. Momin shared somewhere that he had found the German coverage.
Okay.
So in addition to that little factoid, I'm kind of fascinated, mostly because I don't read German, I can't see. How did the Germans manage to get so much Babi history coverage in the period? How did that work? Why? I mean, there was an Austrian officer who wrote about the program against the Babis, very explicitly telling what was going on. So repeatedly, the German or the Austrian language coverage was so forefront. How did that work? What does that mean?
Okay. I mean, as you said, there was one soldier, this Austrian soldier, who reported the killings of the Babis, which is also quoted in many Baha'i books. And then we have, if I'm not wrong, we have a German physician of the Shah, correct me if I'm wrong, who was also witness to some events. And then there
He
were
was
also
Polish, but yes, associated
Yes.
with the Germans. Yes.
And then there was this other German scholar, Andreas, who also was either born in Iran or spent many years in Iran, and also has a book about the Babis, actually. So I would assume that German consuls or diplomats or physicians were aware of what was happening and sent reports to Europe. That would be my guess.
Right, but in particular, all these things were published somewhere, not just somewhere
Yes.
on a shelf or in somebody's collection, or to receive by individuals,
Yes,
but
yes,
published publicly for people.
yes,
That's
yes,
astonishing to me.
yes. It's German precision, I would say.
Well, if I could say something, the reports of the Bobbies were published all over Europe. And the more we investigate the European newspapers and reports, the more instances we find. The sort of progressive intellectuals of Europe,
Right.
all over Europe, were fascinated by the Bobby movement,
Yes.
and even appropriated the Bobby movement for their own purposes, and
Yes.
to reinforce their arguments for women's rights and so on. So we haven't fully researched or appreciated the impact of the Bobby religion on Europe. But as you say, it was quite considerable. All of the intellectual class in Europe had heard of the Bobbies and had some notion of the Bobby religion.
Yes, and Stephen, the right person for this would be Amin Echea, our friend from Spain, who
Yes, that's
he knows
right.
he knows the genealogy of all this newspaper clippings, and he's been collecting them for probably 20 years or more. So, and he published the Apostle of Peace about Abdel Baha. So he is not here now, but that would be a question for Amin. I think it was Yasmin now, no?
That is amazing. And hopefully one day we'll all be able to share that here on the Chlor Baha'is channel. With that being said, our next question, I believe it was the account George Millinghoff. I'm sorry, I know you're probably not George, so
Yasmin.
welcome.
We don't hear you. We don't hear you. Oh, yes, now.
Okay, that's my husband's account. My name is Yasmin Mellinghoff from Germany, and I would just like to make a little comment on Anthony Lee's first comment about Tahereh and the family lives and husbands going away for long periods, etc. I'm not familiar with the customs in the Oriental countries in that time, but I was thinking that Tahereh herself, she had probably an unusual behavior in her family life as a wife, because she was married, and as far as I know, she had 3 children, and then she accepted the Bab's message, and finally she broke up with her family and left them all behind. I have no idea what happened with her children, etc. Probably, I suppose this was unusual behavior, and I also think that in this turbulent time of the first days of the faith, probably it was the plan of God, that there was this rupture everywhere. The Babis breaking with all traditions, with coming with new ideas, having to not having a normal life, being expelled, etc. And but this is just my idea, and maybe Nechati, you could say something about how unusual such a behavior of a wife really was, or whether I'm mistaken with this conclusion.
I think it's very unusual. I mean, a woman leaving her family and being an intellectual. Actually, she was very, she was educated. As you know, women weren't really properly educated, most of them, at least in Persia. But I mean, Tahirih is really an exception, I would say. She was a learned woman, and so and she left everything behind, even her family. And we know from Martha Root's book about Tahirih, which Tony republished many years ago, there I think she speaks to having met relatives of Tahirih at that time. Was that in the 1930s, Tony?
Yes.
I think, yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes,
So-
Tahirih's children, she had 4 children actually, which she couldn't keep with her. These children belonged to her husband, of course, and they remained Muslims, and the family is still today a clerical family in Qom, and they're sort of proud of Tahirih, but they have, sort of circumspect about their relationship to her.
Right.
Mujan Momen has written about this rather extensively. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing though, the premise that Tahirih, in an age where women were viewed in much of the world as you would chattel. Chattel is property, not necessarily personhood, and it's amazing the power that Tahirih was imbued with to not just break with centuries old norm, but to arise and to proclaim the cause, and to have, of course, women, but men as well, submit and listen to what she had to say. It's very, very valuable to consider the miracle of that alone, when unfortunately women were silenced so regularly. Dear Mary, please, you have your hand raised. If you could unmute.
Hi. Yeah. So I wanted just to. I'm sure you are all very learned, a lot more than me. But I've just started reading Leaves of the Twin Divine Trees by Bahire Rouhani, and I don't know if she's got another.
Malani.
Yeah, thank you. And the information she has about the women, not just in the in the immediate families, but even in the kind of the network, is phenomenal. And I would highly recommend. I've just started, like I think I've just gotten to chapter 1. It's very dense, but it gives a picture of their lives, which really, I mean, we don't really even have a picture of the lives of those who were Muslim, conventional, and remained behind the veil. But these women, they were sort of, they kind of had double lives because of their husbands or sons. And my understanding is that the reaction of their families really was, it was a whole spectrum. And so anyway, that's all it's not like, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's very beautiful. We have the participants to share, and I think Andy Murphy, you have a question and or share here. Let's see, unmute. There we go.
Can you
I
hear
can't
me?
hear you, Andy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. Okay. If I read that slide correctly, it said that the tablet that was written to Sultan Abdul Nasir said that something about him dying by his own hand. Did that mean that he would eventually commit suicide? And is that exactly what happened?
No, let me just see the phrase. He says, Verily do we write the decree of thy death at thine own hands. Well, what we know, no, it was not suicide, but almost. You see, one British historian says about Sultan Abdul Majid, he loved wine, women, and reform. So it was because he drank too much wine. His liver got sick, and then he died of cirrhosis. That's the correct word, I guess. Yeah. So this is not suicide, but he got sick and died of most probably of overconsumption of wine.
I see.
This was his fate.
Thank you.
And that was our Andy Murphy moment. I know Andy will chuckle on that one. He regularly attends the Sunday devotionals and has
Great.
beautiful music to share. His guitar playing is just so luminous when we get to listen to it and all the bright thoughts that fill our heads.
Thank you.
With that being said, we have one more question. And this is from me. So
Please.
the question that I have, it's about this very clear fate that Mulla Bastami had, which was in leaving Iran and in going to the Ottoman Empire and being exiled. Of course, his fate was to be silenced and to be punished for his actions.
Right.
How many do you think shared a similar fate to Mr. Bastami?
Okay, so we know that Mullah Ali Bastami was the first one outside Iran to suffer for the cause and the first Babi martyr. But we also know that, as also I think Shoghi Effendi says, that Quddus and his companion Mullah Sadegh, the way how were they punished in Shiraz, humiliated, as you can read in the Dawnbreakers, they were put rings in the nose and dragged through the streets, and their beard burned. And so there were, I mean, the early Babis were, I think the fate of Mullah Ali Bastami was, of course, severe, like intense, but there were more intense cases in Iran, actually. And we know how the Babis were killed and tortured.
So would you say that Mullah Ali Bastami, and for example, going ahead in the future, we have Haji Mirza Hyder Ali and his companions that went to the Sudan. Not that they chose to go there, they were imprisoned and sent there to be shut away forever. These are, would you say, not so abnormal for Baha'is and Babis of the time? Is this representative of treatment of many others?
I think so, especially in Iran. And as I mentioned in my first talk, I think there was this question about the treatment of the Babis and Baha'is in Iran and the Ottoman Empire. And really, like, I mean, the case of Bastami is mild, I would say, because he was handed to the Ottomans and not sent back to Iran. And we don't know how the Iranians would have treated him in Iran. So I think I always say, despite the injustices of the Ottomans committed against, say, Bastami the Bab or Bahá'u'lláh later, I would say it was a blessing in disguise for the Baha'i faith to be in the Ottoman Empire and not like developing in Iran. That's my historian's view of it.
It's a very profound one, and something that I find very, very important to explore. And as we had in the previous session, asked a similar line of questioning, I think it's important for everyone here in reflection on this talk, that very point you mentioned, Dr. Alkan, the premise that you bring that the Baha'i faith was really, yes, we know it was started through the Babi faith. We understand that. However, the declaration of Bahá'u'lláh and Baha'u'llah's exile until the rest of his banishment, until the ascension of Baha'u'lláh, it took place in, and was really in the Ottoman Empire. That is an amazing point to reflect upon. And this clear distinction between the treatment of the Persian government to those who became Baha'is, declaring their belief in the Bab or Bahá'u'lláh, and the treatment of the Ottoman authorities and the Babis and the Baha'is. And what's more interesting to mention is this distinction of what Baha'u'lláh taught the Baha'is versus the Babis. Yes. So and you please correct me if I'm wrong, but a very important piece in this was Baha'u'llah's caution of the Baha'is to use wisdom, not to lie for their faith. On the contrary, to tell everyone that they are a Baha'i when asked. However, not to clearly prophesize or to engage in fighting for their faith, right?
Exactly. I think he pacified the Bab dispensation.
So how would you see this transformative act of Baha'u'lláh forbidding Baha'is to engage in armed conflict, not only again to not defend themselves for their faith in the context that the Babis did, where they had to take up arms to defend their lives, but Baha'is are forbidden to disobey their government.
Yes, I mean, there's, even if we know that the Babi and Baha'i religions are just like one, there are really like also important differences when, for example, Bab still allowed jihad for the defense of their faith, or to dissimulate, to hide their belief in times of danger, like what is called taqiyya in Iran, yes? But then Baha'u'lláh, being like declaring himself at the Garden of Rizwan, saying that, for example, abolishing this law of jihad, saying that it's abolished. Don't use the sword, use your words to proclaim the cause. This is, I think, one of the radical things I would say Baha'u'lláh did and said.
So you mentioned something about taqiyya, and this is something that I know is practiced. You're telling me now it was practiced in the Babi faith as well as the Muslim faith, correct?
Yes. Especially Shia Islam.
Can you please elaborate on this concept? Because I know the West, we are definitely not really exposed to this concept. And myself as a Baha'i, I'm not exposed to it per se in the context that I'm told to give up my life if need be, in the context of either, being asked to say what my faith, and the choice being to say that I'm not a Baha'i or I am a Baha'i. So what is it that this concept is and entails, so that people watching can understand?
So basically, this taqiyya in Arabic, or taqiyya in Persian, is this instruction, especially in Shia Islam, like it's called dissimulation of the faith. Like in times of danger, you can lie and say, I'm not Shi'i, or I'm not Alawi, or I'm not whatever. Like all these Shi'i-based movements, they can hide their faith in times of danger and say, I'm not this, I'm not that. And so up to this day, the Shi'is are allowed to use this. And also, like, as you may have sensed from what Nejib Pasha was writing about Bastami, so he was saying basically that Bastami was lying, that he didn't know the name of the promised one. I think it was just this tactic Bastami used, because the Bab told him, don't disclose my name in the beginning, yes? And so Bastami uses this, and it's clearly taqiyya, just not saying the name, just saying it was a Sayyid from Shiraz who gave me this book, but I don't know his name. So, I mean, the Ottomans would have probably know this. and then in coming actually to the dispensation of Baha'u'lláh, there are a few instances actually where Baha'u'lláh and Abdul Baha, of course, it depends on the context, they instructed the Baha'is to hide their faith. Yes, and I mean, generally speaking, as you said, they shouldn't lie about their faith, but there are a few instances up to the ministry of Shoghi Effendi where we have tablets of Baha'u'lláh and Abdul Baha saying you can use taqiyya or wisdom, hikmat, yes, or
well, that was still practiced, and even until the turn of the century. I
Yes.
mean, the fifth
Until
century, not
that,
the previous.
yes, yes.
This century. But that practice of using wisdom is merely to not proselytize your belief to others.
Also, yes, yes.
So that means if I'm a person who lives in a country that is not very friendly to my beliefs are between me and God, like saying my obligatory prayer, the namaz. I'm going to say that in private. Likewise, the beliefs you have, when it's not welcomed by others, there's no ear to listen. It's not our role to push it on other people. We're not missionaries. If we pioneer,
yes.
don't go to again to proselytize. We go to live the life, and by our example, people become Baha'i because they see the word of God in action. So
exactly.
that idea of hikmat is using hikmat rayat. It's the idea of using your wisdom in sharing your faith with one who desires to hear it. Whereas again, just simply sharing it with people who are not asking for it, unprovoked, sharing of one's faith in a place where you could be killed for your beliefs. I would feel it's extremely different from a government official saying, what is your faith? And if you have no opportunity, for example, Baha'is until recently would put other as their religion because they had no opportunity to say Baha'i. But for example, in Egypt, they didn't have that opportunity. Now they had to write what their religion was within the accepted religions. So because they couldn't put other, they couldn't lie to say that their religion is for example, Christian, Muslim, or Jew only,
right,
where they're excluding the others. So because they couldn't make that exclusion, they had to, of course, go to the court system and ask for that recognition to be able to put something like other, or not to put anything at all, rather than being forced to check a box.
Yes.
So there's a clear distinction in the context of a government setting where they are prompting the Baha'i to say that they are Baha'i or some religion versus the free sharing of one's faith and beliefs in an unprovoked circumstance. Would we agree that is the difference, or is there something that I'm missing?
No, I think there's a difference, but any other friend can also comment.
Yes, and Stephen, I know you patiently had your hand raised. Please, you're welcome as well to ask your question, but we can also dwell on this subject too.
Okay, well, my question partly spins off your question earlier, but I wanted to warm up to it a little bit. I picked up on your presentation, Dr. Alkan, that there was like a triple process. Ali Bastami first to try to promote the faith, and he was ultimately arrested and sent on to prison. Tahereh then doing the same kind of thing, and ultimately being somewhat silenced and pushed back, and then Bahá'u'lláh coming and promoting the faith in that area, and then he actually was brought further away and sort of a banishment, but in the other direction. And that reminds me of John's question, which I maybe heard a little bit of, but I wanted to make particular. The idea of being banished from Iran in the Babi period is not common, is my understanding. And he mentioned somebody banished to the Sudan, which I'm not sure. Is that in the Babi period?
That's the Baha'i period.
Oh, Baha'i period.
Yeah. And the gentleman's name was Haji Mirza Haydar Ali.
The Angel of Caramel.
Premise. Just to give a premise of timing, he actually was Shoghi Effendi's teacher when Shoghi Effendi was a child.
Okay.
So that makes the timing right for you.
Right. But that opened the question of how many people were banished that suffered for the faith, for the Babi faith, in addition to Ali Bastami, or is he singular in the Babi period?
He's singular. As far as I know, he's the only one who was banished even to Istanbul. So that's the only case, yes.
Okay, and then I wanted to speak a little bit to John's question about how many Babis suffered, and you mentioned that they suffered sometimes worse, and I agree. I remember Nabil's narrative and the Austrian testimony that we mentioned earlier, but I also wanted to mention there's a kind of a controversy from scholarship in the 70s and 80s about how many Babis were suffered in that pogrom, and that the Baha'i sources, Abdul Baha, say 20 or 30,000. And there was this controversy that only 2,000 maybe could be identified. And that a new source kind of popped up when the digital newspapers were coming online, and they reported 20 and 30,000 being killed, especially in southern Iran, but not just an out of the blue mention that this was happening, but for months. I believe this starts with in August, the event, but then around October, I believe it is, towards the end of October, they start mentioning hundreds in Tehran. And then by the time you get to the end of December, they're talking about 20 or 30,000. So there's this whole pattern of coverage going on. There's a letter of, you may know the name, Reverend Austin Wright. Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
Whose letter was also translated into the German and published. But the original English has been found. And that led a couple of us to be very curious and see if we could find the actual anything materials from Reverend Austin Wright. And it turns out Dartmouth University has a collection from his son, but the son included an inheritance from the father. And in it, there's a codex of drafts of his letters. In other words, he would draft a letter, make his final version, and then he'd send it. And that's one of those letters that we know of Reverend Austin Wright. But the originals are sometimes in this book of his, this codex.
Amazing.
And one of them refers to camels arriving in Tehran with heads of Babis. And I don't remember exactly I think there's some description of how many, but I don't want to dwell on that too much. It is a secondhand account, but Reverend Austin Wright heard it, if I remember right, I'm doing this by memory, from a British consul who himself saw the camels arrive in Tehran, according to the report. And I'm hoping someone will publish more about that in the near future, I hope. But yes, 20 or 30,000 is independently verified through European language newspapers in the period, as opposed to just Baha'i history sources or trying to come up with evaluations later. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you so much. We both said the same thing. Thank you so much, Stephen, for your contribution here. It means a lot to the group. I want to, because it is about 12:30 and it's almost time for us to close, almost. We want to please, Mary, we want to have this shared, the information that you've shared in the chat. If you could make that contribution, and after that contribution, we're going to be closing out. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much, John. So very quickly, this whole conversation about lying, and then the Persian term of, which I can't remember, I'm sorry. Anyway, it just...
What was it? Taqiyat? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Taqiyya. I added a T at the end.
So
Taqiyya.
I had found this letter some time ago. From the Universal House of Justice, and I believe it's dated 1985, July 3rd, 1985. And it's very insightful in terms of both, the personal situations that we find ourselves in, the official situations, and it has a lot of nuance and explains very clearly. And I love the fact that they use the term dissimulation, because that is has so much more context and so many more facets than just saying to somebody, oh, you're lying. Anyway, I recommend. If
you also mentioned something in the comment at 12:28. Would you like to read it, or you want me to read it? Your comment.
About the
Joey Effendi taught us.
Right. So when we were talking about, somebody mentioned, missionaries and teaching, and that is from I come from a Catholic background of many generations, and there is such a massive difference between teaching, a teacher, and a missionary, and proselytizing.
Mm.
You know, a teacher, the way I understand it and how I understand Shoghi Effendi has explained it in his writings, especially in the Advent of Divine Justice, is that person who looks, reflects on the three spiritual prerequisites, which are kind of the fundamental, and on a daily basis, nothing different from what Bahá'u'lláh has told us to do, that we're supposed to pray twice a day, say the prayer, the obligatory prayer. And as a result, in doing that, we are transformed. It doesn't mean that we're becoming perfect. Just the effort itself, because we're also, as well as reflecting on our thoughts and actions, we are also bringing ourselves to account each day. And it is God that decides whether my accounting is acceptable or not, because I may just be in a whole other world and see my vain imaginings, my veils, as being me being transformed, and really all that is spiritual pride. You know, so I think it's because in the Baha'i faith we don't just work on ourselves. The whole purpose of this personal transformation is for us to work on the betterment of the world. Because without that focus, it just stays the same as a church. I go to church, you know, and we have somewhat of that kind of situation in our communities. You know, somebody goes to feast, somebody does this, not to judge, but, you know, it's easy. That's so much easier than developing this awareness of who I am, really looking at myself and saying, you know, how am I doing in terms of achieving justice in my life? How am I showing justice in my life?
And that's a good point you make. Actually, in the comment, which I'll read off, you wrote, Shoghi Effendi taught us that each one of us are the first teaching tool. It is the work that we do in adhering to the covenant with Bahá'u'lláh and transforming ourselves that makes us a teacher versus a missionary.
Sorry, sorry, John, I kind of went off.
No, it's fine. But I wanted to take where you were and take it to one last place, and we can close out for the afternoon. The idea here is that no teaching that any Baha'i engages in, no matter how planned out you think their teaching initiative is, no matter what you think you do, no matter how smart you think you are, Shoghi Effendi makes it clear for us that unless and until you embody the word of God in your action, in your deeds, in your spirit, in your heart, until you actually engage in what Baha'u'lláh has brought for this age. And we're not saying to just unloose your tongue. It's about in your action, living the life.
Yeah.
And it's through living the life. It's through these experiences where the light contrasts so much with the darkness around us in this age where everyone's integrity is questioned.
Yeah.
It's very easy to say beautiful words, but it's not so easy to live a life where we let deeds and not words be our adorning. So with that being said, we want to thank all of you, every one of you who have given your contributions and your questions. And of course, Dr. Alkan, thank you so much for sharing this very important story of Mr. Bastami. Such a beautiful story. We thank all of you
so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And
Great.
thank
Like
you
this
all
video.
for your patience with me. And this is
No,
so
no worries.
wonderful. I
Please.
just,
Everyone, just go to Clearwater Baha'is, the YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe, like this video and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this and so we can produce more. So
Yeah.
again, we thank you so much. And your questions, comments, all these are really important. Please send us some. And again, on the YouTube video, the Facebook page for the Baha'i Center of Clearwater. We wish you all a beautiful afternoon. Thank you.
thank you.
See you
Thank
next
so
week.
much,
Thank you.
Dr. Altan. And I hope
Thank you very
to see
much.
you again.
Thank